So when it comes to tax sale investing, you have choices: tax liens, tax deeds, redeemable deeds, hybrid states, and even tax sale overages or surplus funds. So what gives? Which one is best? That's exactly what we're discussing today. First off, before we get started, my name is Casey Dimon. I've been investing in tax liens and tax deeds for well over 2 decades now. And I've been training others for more than a dozen years through my videos, books, and comprehensive training platform at taxsaleacademy.com. For you, it is true, there are a few different ways that you can invest in delinquent tax real estate. So figuring out what's best is obviously pretty important. Today we'll be discussing each tax sale product type, and I'll give my opinion on who it works best for. Now, before we get started, before we go any deeper, I do want you to understand 2 very important things. Everybody has different objectives. What works best for me might not work best for you, and vice versa. So keep that in mind. And number 2, where you live should not dictate what you think you must invest in. So get that thought out of your head right now. We have something called the internet that gives us a lot of power in choosing where and what we want to invest in. I got members inside the Tax Sale Academy from all across the world that do extremely well investing in the United States. So you can invest in any product type you choose, even if you live in another state or another country. All right, let's get to it. The first tax sale investment type that we'll be discussing is the tax lien system. This is a system that is used by a good chunk of the country. With this system, and with every system, it all starts the same, and that is when the owner fails to pay the property taxes on time. They have a property tax bill, and it goes unpaid. Obviously, the county needs that money to cover all the amenities that we use on a daily basis, like roads, schools, police, fire, and all sorts of other stuff. So, shortly after the taxes become late, they will sell a tax lien against that property. And basically what this means that you're paying the back due taxes in exchange for a return on your investment, which is backed by the real estate which had the late taxes. So let's look at an example now. Let's say you are investing in a tax lien for a house that has back due taxes of $1,000 even. Now, let's say that in this particular state, they have a 12% interest rate on those tax liens that they sell. So that means the delinquent taxpayer has to pay you back $1,000 plus 12% per year. So if they pay you at the end of year 1, you'll have made $120 off your $1,000 investment. In the event that the delinquent taxpayer fails to pay you back at all, you can eventually foreclose your tax lien and you'll become the owner of that property. Now, I should note that depending on where you're investing and what type of properties you're investing in, typically 90 to 96% of the time, the delinquent taxpayer will come forth after the fact and pay off those delinquent taxes. They will redeem that tax lien, in which case you will get your money back plus your interest. It is pretty rare to actually be able to foreclose a tax lien and get a property. So keep that in mind. But obviously, when you are able to foreclose one, it is a home run deal. With that said, you still need to know what you are investing in. You still need to know the value of that underlying asset, which is the real estate. If you just buy a lien that's not attached to anything, it does absolutely zero good because it does not have any sort of collateral. When you buy a tax lien, however, it is attached to some piece of real estate. So you have to know all about the real estate it is attached to. That way, you know if that lien is a viable investment or not. If you're paying, say, $1,500 for a tax lien, and then you eventually have to have an attorney foreclose on that tax lien, and that attorney charges, say, it's $2,500. Now you have $4,000 into this piece of property, but what if that property is a vacant lot out in the middle of nowhere that's landlocked that might be only worth $3,000 or $4,000, right? There isn't a whole lot of room there to make it work in that scenario, so you need to understand what you're getting into. Likewise, if the property has code violations or other major issues that you get stuck with because you did not do your research, you can quickly turn that tax lien investment into a negative return. So the research aspect is definitely still there, but the odds of getting that property, getting that home run, are quite low. So, who are tax liens best for? Who should invest in tax liens? If you are looking to invest in a secure asset and get an above market return with less effort required than actually owning a property, tax liens are going to be the way to go. Now, obviously, you can get into a tax lien that pays you 2% if you're careless and you have no idea what you're doing. But a 12 to 18-ish% return is not uncommon. And of course, again, that lien is backed by real estate. And you can generally get into liens for minimal money in the scheme of things. Liens can be purchased as low as $50 or maybe $100. But plan on spending $300 to say $1,000 for anything of quality. And what I mean by that is a lien backed by anything of quality. Has some sort of valuable real estate backing that lien. Now, the process is guaranteed by the government. And since your investment is typically just a tiny fraction of the fair market value, it's not going to be as volatile as stocks or other investments that go up and down on a daily basis. So put in the work up front to research the properties, to find the right liens, and then you can simply park your money and you will earn your return when you get the checks in the mail. It's true mailbox money without any additional effort for 90 to 96% of the time after you make that investment. So that's tax liens. The next tax sale product type that we'll be discussing are tax deeds. So with a tax deed, the property taxes go delinquent, as they do in every one of these systems. But instead of a lien being sold against the property to a third party, the county basically holds that lien themselves. They will require that the delinquent taxpayer comes in and pays off the late due taxes plus interest owed to the county directly and any fees that the county might charge. Now, usually they'll hold this property in-house for 2 or 3 years as a property that has delinquent taxes. If, after waiting that long, the delinquent taxpayer never comes forward to pay off the back due taxes plus whatever the county is charging them, the county will then sell that property at a public auction. It's usually called a tax deed auction for obvious reasons. In this situation, you are not buying a lien against the property. You are buying the actual property. Your entire investment hinges on the property itself. This means that in order to eliminate as much risk as possible, you need to learn as much about the property as possible, the market that property is in, and you had better had a plan lined up that will allow you to capitalize on your investment. You're not parking money here. You're actually buying a piece of real estate, and you need to know what you're going to do with it. Simply buying that tax deed will never make you any money until you sell it, rent it, or otherwise use it. Unlike tax liens, where the majority of the time you will realize your property simply by walking out to the mailbox and cashing a check, you actually have to put forth additional effort in order to sell that property, which requires time and in some cases, money. So who should invest in tax deeds? Tax deeds are generally a much more involved investment than tax liens. First off, they will require more money in most situations. While the bidding might start at the back due taxes, you're going to be in a competitive bidding environment. So your price is going to depend on the competition that is there. Now, there are certain ways around this competition. There's ways to go to areas where it has lower levels of competition. I've purchased properties for literally 2 and 3 cents on the dollar. I've got videos about those properties on my YouTube channel, including screenshots of deeds when I purchased those properties. But generally, you should expect to pay a little bit more than 2 or 3 cents on the dollar. Now, unlike tax liens, with a tax deed, you're not going to make money simply by checking your mail. I just mentioned that. And the reason I mentioned that is a lot of people want to get into this business and want to go out and buy properties, but they never think about the effort required afterwards. You're going to need to know everything possible about that property ahead of time. That means you have to put forth all the effort in to researching that property. You need to know everything about that property. Code violations, you better know how much money you're going to owe. Foundation issues, you better know how to figure them out. Maybe it's a vacant lot. You better figure out if it's buildable or not, because you're not going to make a single dime until you sell that property. And a lot of times what I find out is new investors will go out and just haphazardly buy properties, And when they go to sell those properties, they realize, I bought junk land. I bought property that is landlocked. I bought property that is too small to build on. They find out they have a problem only after they've purchased those tax deed properties. So your research ahead of time must be on point, and you must have an exit plan. But the good news here is that you will be rewarded for your efforts, as tax deeds generally produce higher returns than tax liens. In short, more work, more return on your money. Next one we're discussing are redeemable deeds. Now, redeemable deeds are only offered in a few states, but they are extremely profitable, so they're worth discussing. A redeemable deed situation starts the same as every other state, and that is when the owner fails to pay the property taxes on time. But instead of selling a lien against the property or waiting 2 to 3 years to sell a deed against the property, the county will wait a shorter period of time and sell what is known as a redeemable deed. And this is more or less a cross between a lien and a deed. You will actually buy the property, but there will be a redemption window in which the delinquent taxpayer can come back, pay off what is due, and get the property back. So in some situations, in some states, you'll actually be the owner of that property in public records, but they can come back and buy it from you by paying you what you have invested in the property plus and return on your money. Now, in some situations, it might be as high as 25% on your money within 6 months. So you understand, redeemable deeds can be extremely profitable if you have the staying power to be able to hold those properties for 6 months or maybe even a year prior to selling them. For example, if you buy a piece of property for $100,000, they redeem it month number 6, they give you $125,000. That's a pretty good return. So you would get returns higher than most tax liens, or you would get the property after the redemption period expires. Now, who are redeemable deed properties best suited for? Generally, these are best suited for the folks willing to put forth additional work, but also the folks that have the staying power to tie up their money somewhat. Now, unlike a tax lien, where you usually just go and pay the back due taxes, with a redeemable deed, you'll be paying much closer to tax deed prices since you'll be getting the property most of the time. In other words, that's more money you need to be able to invest. Now, obviously, making 25% on your money in 6 months is incredible. But if you operate your business where you need every penny all of the time, waiting 6 or 12 months for a property to cycle its way through the redemption period might not suit your investing style. All right, next up are overage investing or surplus funds. And I'm only addressing these because I know somebody is going to ask. I don't consider these investing. I consider it more or less a job, if I'm honest. So here's the concept. In this approach, when a property sells for more money than is owed in taxes, a surplus is created. So if the taxes are, say, $1,000 and the property sells for $10,000, you have a $9,000 difference. You have a $9,000 surplus. That surplus in many states belongs to the former owner of the property. The idea here behind this type of business for investors, if you want to call them that, is that the owners, they don't know about that surplus. So the middleman comes in. They contact the former owners and say, hey, you have surplus money due to you, and I will help you retrieve it for a percentage. So this approach requires you to track down the properties that have surpluses, and then you have to approach the former owners of those properties and then offer them help to claim that surplus for a percentage of that surplus. So maybe it's 15%, 20%, or even 50% of that surplus that belongs to the former owner. So in our example, that $9,000 surplus, they'll say, I'll help you get this money if you give me half. So they take $4,500 and the former owner gets $4,500. Now, what most people don't realize when they see this type of so-called opportunity is it's an incredibly labor-intensive business. More and more regulations are being developed daily. And I've seen a lot of negative news articles, lawsuits, and complaints against those who operate in this business. And many states actually have laws that consider this type of business predatory, and they limit the amount of the finder's fees, where some people then go as far as hiring attorneys to get around the laws through special contracts or quick claim deeds or processes to try to beat the system that's designed to protect former owners. Now, if you have full teams of attorneys and call centers and all that good stuff, it might work out for you, but something else you should know, it's extremely competitive. I actually had a property one time that got tax foreclosed. I sold this piece of property to somebody during a time when the tax bill was due, and the person I sold it to never paid a single cent towards those taxes, but my name did get included in the file, one of the LLCs that I use. That property eventually went to a tax deed sale and was sold. Shortly thereafter, there's about a dozen different people or companies that contacted me that wanted to help me with my surplus funds. And they would offer to do it for fees that range from 25 to 60%. Mind you, the overage was like $3,000. It was a very, very small overage, and there was a dozen people after that specific overage and trying to help me. I went out, filed the paper, got my money without any help in a matter of 5 or 6 minutes. It was a very, very quick process. So who is this for? Honestly, in my opinion, it's for those looking for a full-time job that requires quite a bit of effort. I'm not against effort, but I am against spending a lot of time doing something when your time is more valuable doing something else. I would actually much rather invest in real estate on my own terms while doing the things that I want to do in life, opposed to creating a job for myself. Just my opinion. I'm sure for some folks out there, it might work. But in my opinion, you need to go after tax liens or tax deeds. So there you have it. The 3 different tax sale systems and who they are best suited for. There are a couple of variations, of course, to each one of these systems, and every state is just a little bit different. But this episode will hopefully help you determine how you can best get started. For more information on the specific system used by your state, be sure to check the links in today's show notes for our state guide. Or if you're listening to this while you are driving, once you pull over or once you finish your drive, you can simply Google Tax Sale Academy State Guide, and it will pop up in your browser to provide you all the systems and all the details used by the various states. That's all I've got for you today. I truly hope this episode has helped you out. If you enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes here on our podcast, please do us a huge favor. We don't charge a listening or membership fee for these episodes at all, but your positive reviews, your positive feedback really help us out in the algorithms of YouTube and on our podcast systems. So please just take a second out of your day to leave a 5-star review or tap that thumbs up button. And as always, if we can be of any additional help, make sure you check out all the links in today's show notes, including the one to our step-by-step training academy at taxsaleacademy.com. Hey, take care, folks, and make it a successful day. We'll see you next time on the Tax Sale Podcast. Bye-bye.